you hear out of him directly and from his social media posts.
All right, Leah, let's zoom out a little bit and think about the broader justice system and the Department of Justice. Yesterday, a DOJ attorney was placed on leave after he represented the government in court in the case of Kilmar Albrego Garcia, who was deported and sent to a prison in El Salvador due to an administrative error. The DOJ attorney conceded to the judge that Garcia, quote, should not have been removed, and, quote, the absence of evidence speaks for itself. What does this tell you about what is happening inside the halls of the DOJ? And to your ear, was this a remarkable admission from a government lawyer?
It wasn't remarkable in that when there's an error, the government should and has confessed error in the past. I think what's remarkable about this is that apparently is now potentially a fireable offense. The Department of Justice lawyer conceded that this was someone who was deported because of a paperwork error. This is not someone who the government believes is part of the Tren de Aragua gang and should not have been deported under the Alien Enemies Act proclamation. And he was put on administrative leave, and his supervisor was also put on administrative leave for the offense of failing to keep a subordinate in line. And so to the extent, we have an administration that is now looking for judges who are, in Josh's words, going against the grain. I mean, I don't know if that means they are now looking for judges who are unwilling to admit the truth or unwilling to follow the law, since that's now apparently what they are looking for in DOJ federal government lawyers.
So Josh Lee makes a great point. The president clearly expects loyalty from the people that he surrounds himself with and the people that he appoints. And that likely includes his judicial appointments, whom he's taken to calling, as you say, my judges. The interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, Ed Martin, caught some flack earlier this year for referring to DOJ attorneys as, quote, President.
I think they're very real, and it does get to one question about whether the appointees that Trump comes up with that we haven't seen yet for the judicial posts in his second term look anything like the ones in his first term. When we worked on that story, we sort of set out to find out who those people might be. And there's a sense that Trump has gotten into kind of a falling out, if you will, with the Federalist Society figures who handled his judicial nominations during the first term. People like Leonard Leo said to not really be on speaking terms with the president anymore. Whether someone like Don McGahn, who was a White House counsel in the first term, is still involved. We're seeing some indications that he may still be involved. But it does seem like Trump and some of his advisors would like to go in a different direction to get sort of more aggressive, more extreme.
For policies without full legal scrutiny. That same approach is once again underway in the deportations case and in others now before the court. Can you say more about this strategy and whether there has been sufficient pushback on the administration from the courts so far?
Yeah, so what the administration is doing is they are taking all of these unfavorable rulings that have thus far happened in the lower courts that have actually gone into the facts and had time to write opinions explaining why the administration's actions are illegal. And then they go up to the Supreme Court on the emergency docket or the shadow docket and ask the court for permission to put these policies into effect immediately without the Supreme Court having to explain why it is allowing the administration to put these policies into effect. And they ask the courts to make that determination on a very expedited basis, perhaps before the justices have time to familiarize themselves with the legal record in these cases as the trial judges have. And so what we are seeing is the administration is continuing to play fast and loose with the facts as they ask the Supreme Court to allow them to implement these policies. And sometimes the Supreme Court has done so. So just at the end of last week,
that was the landscape in the immediate wake of Dobbs. Healthcare providers afraid to even mention the availability of safe legal abortion in other states for fear of prosecution. And all of this came at a time when that information was absolutely critical for patients in Alabama. More troublingly, during this same period, abortion opponents were claiming that Robin Marty and other providers in the field were exaggerating the risks of prosecution for directing patients to legal health care. But it didn't take long before Alabama's Attorney General told on himself. In 2023, he explicitly threatened to levy felony charges against any individuals or groups who assisted pregnant women in accessing out-of-state abortion care. The threat sent a chill throughout the state's healthcare industry, preventing medical professionals from rendering any sort of aid or guidance, even if it was just verbal, to patients in need. Healthcare providers sued, and they accused the Attorney General of violating their free speech rights and also violating the pregnant patient's right to travel. And this week, a federal judge in Alabama agreed, holding that the state's attorney general cannot prosecute or threaten to prosecute people or organizations who help Alabama residents seek legal, out-of-state abortion care. According to U.S. District Judge Myron Thompson, the attorney general violated both the First Amendment and the constitutional right to travel if he tried to bring up these criminal charges against providers. According to the opinion, quote, at its core, this case is simply about whether a state may prevent people within its borders from going with new bad faith tactics. These tactics include everything from suing out-of-state providers who prescribe abortion pills to passing abortion trafficking laws that charge a woman with trafficking her own fetus if she crosses state lines to access an abortion, even in states where it is legal. Possibly the biggest development is the rise of the fetal personhood movement, a dangerous, once fringe movement that aims to create an entirely new legal class of citizens consisting of embryos and fetuses. This move would allow conservatives to charge women under pre-existing homicide laws that in some states carry the death penalty. In other words, the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs created far more legal complications than it solved for states, leaving judges across the country to navigate this new maze of challenges. And as we've seen on this show, putting millions of women across the country in serious danger. In its Dobbs ruling, the Supreme Court almost guaranteed that these issues would return to the highest court and would force the justices to confront the consequences of their own decision. Joining me now is Robin Marty, whom you saw in the clip with Ali just before the break. She is the executive director of the West Alabama Women's Center, and she is the author of the Handbook for a Post-Roe America. Also joining her is Janice Fountain, executive director of the Yellowhammer Fund, and one of the plaintiffs who sued the attorney general over his threats. Robin, first to you. In that clip that we played before the break, you told Ali that you really feared speaking freely with your patients about the availability of abortion services in other jurisdictions. How has this ruling changed the way that you and the clinic will operate going forward?
You know, it's funny looking at that clip, which always shows when I'm on here. And in the past, when it plays, I found myself always feeling really uncomfortable because I'm like, oops, there I go. That's the thing that I just did that could potentially get us in trouble. And this time I knew it was coming and I watched it and it felt really freeing. It is wonderful to have the chance to be able to tell patients about all of their legal options again, because
In a stunning turn of events, Donald Trump has just lost a major emergency appeal at the Supreme Court, and the fallout is already shaking the political world. Caught on camera reacting to the defeat, Trump reportedly exclaimed, "How could I lose?" In this video, we break down exactly what happened in the courtroom, what it means for Trump's legal future, and how this decision could impact the 2024 election. Don't miss the full story. It's unfolding fast. Subscribe. For more breaking news and analysis, like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments below.